Please take a seat. We're going to start.
Good morning, distinguished delegates, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this last day of our General Assembly. The Bureau met again this morning to revise the provisional timetable as we are quite behind schedule. As you may recall, yesterday we had finished only one item in the agenda, item 8 on the Jumu soup, and still have 8 items to examine today. In the morning, we will try to advance with the following 4 items. Item 9 on the global reflection on the listing mechanisms and proposed revisions to the operational directives. Item 10 on the use of resources of the Intangible Cultural Heritage Fund. Part 2 of item 11 on the election of the members of the Intergovernmental Committee. And item 12 on the proposed revisions to the rules of procedure of the General Assembly. In the afternoon, we are reopening the suspended item 7 with expectations that the discussion of the informal consultation group during lunch hours would help us conclude on paragraph 7 bis and adopt the resolution. We will then continue our work with item 13 on the celebration of the Convention's 20th anniversary, as well as item 14, other business, and then item 15, closing. This provisional timetable has been duly published online with the proposed changes. Dear delegates, before starting the morning session, I wish to draw your utmost attention to how important it is for us to undertake today's work in a smooth and swift manner. As you know, several of the items that we are examining today are crucial for the ongoing functioning of the governing bodies of the Convention. I therefore ask you to be concise and constructive in your interventions. I have requested that the timer be set for each intervention for 2 minutes in this regard. If you could also submit your proposed amendments to the Secretariat in advance using the email address ich-amendments@unesco.org, this would greatly help the smooth conduct of the session. Thank you for your full cooperation and support. And now we proceed to item 9. The global reflection on the listing mechanisms of the Convention and proposed revisions to the operational directives. I have the great pleasure to welcome to the podium the chairperson of the open-ended Intergovernmental Working Group in the framework of the global reflection on the listing mechanisms, Ambassador and Permanent Delegate of Japan to UNESCO, Mr. Atsuyuki Oike. Welcome, Ambassador. May I ask you to give a report of the working group to the General Assembly? The floor is yours, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Dear members of the General Assembly, the global reflection on the listing mechanisms of the Convention was a long and inclusive process that started in 2018, involving expert survey and consultations, as well as intergovernmental discussions. I was entrusted with the role of spearheading the reflection as chairperson of the open-ended Intergovernmental Working Group. It has been my great honor. Allow me to express my gratitude to all stakeholders involved, including the experts who participated in the earlier consultation and the state parties who took part in the working group meeting. Be assured that your dedication and insightful discussions have led to the significant results achieved by the global reflection. We had the same bureau for all 3 parts of the meeting. I take this opportunity to thank the 5 vice chairpersons from Germany, Poland, Peru, Cote d'Ivoire, and Kuwait for their great help. Allow me first to summarize the steps followed for the process. With the combination of a survey and online Category 6 meeting, the expert consultation that took place from March to May 2021 laid a ground for the work of the working group. The experts initially proposed 4 main approaches for the reform of the listing mechanisms. The 4 suggestions are A, stricter control, B, fine-tuning, C, repositioning, and D, maximum inclusivity. In the end, experts chose 2 of those approaches to present to the working group, namely B, fine-tuning, and C, repositioning. Interestingly, consultations showed that experts were equally split in their recommendations of these 2 broad approaches. Given the extensive nature of the recommendations gained by the expert meeting and their potentially far-reaching implications, the meeting of the open-ended working group was convened in 2 parts, one in early July 2021, that is part 1, and additional meeting in early September 2021, this is part 2. Part 1 and part 2 meetings successfully addressed the priority topics of the reflection as previously requested by the committee, which included, so from now on I will go into the individual items. The first, consideration on criteria. Now the working group's recommendations is to maintain all the criteria for a representative list and urgent safeguarding list while taking specific proposals for each of the criteria. So we actually introduced some of the elements into each criteria, but we agreed to maintain those criteria. And there was a considerable discussion on R2. So in the end, instead of deleting R2, we decided to change its content. The criterion P9 of the Register of Good Safeguarding Practices is to be deleted, and the nomination form for each criterion will be simplified. Establishing specific procedure for removing or transferring elements from and between lists. This is the second major item. It is important to note that under the new system, communities may directly express their wish to transfer an element, although the process of transfer has to be initiated by the state parties concerned. This is an element of compromise between the 2 different schools of thought. The transfer from the urgent safeguarding list to the representative list will follow the normal cycle, and this procedure is now linked to periodic reporting. As to the procedure for removing an element, the reform system foresees a 6-step procedure that distinguishes removal requests submitted by the state party concerned or by other entities. So now the other entities can actually propose to remove an element from the list, but nonetheless, the procedure is slightly more cautious in that case. The new system also includes the idea of enhanced follow-up if the committee considers that additional information is needed. We spent considerable time both in part 1 and part 2 to produce those procedures for transfer and removal. Now coming to the question of establishing procedure for the extension of multinational files, the working group distinguished a procedure for an extension at international and national levels. The main difference is that the procedure is somewhat lighter for an extension within the state in terms of required criteria. For both types of extension, the state party is asked to demonstrate the consent by original communities for the extension. The working group also identified practices to be encouraged and used in the context of statutory operations under the Convention, notably the use of the community's language or the languages that is accessible to them in the preparation and submission of nominations. And secondly, the use of audiovisual tools where possible for providing information requested in the form as well as for communicating concerns. The use of gender-neutral and inclusive language within all aspects of the Convention. So we used to call, a gentleman's agreement, but this is no longer relevant in this context. Upon the request of the working group, the Secretariat prepared a set of draft amendments to the operational directives based on the recommendations of the Part 1 and Part 2 meetings. These proposed amendments were endorsed by the 16th session of the committee in December 2021, which recommended that the General Assembly revise the operational directives on the basis of and reflecting the spirit of the recommendations of the working group. Now, based on the request of the working group, the 16th session of the committee extended the mandate of the working group to take on additional issues identified by the working group and the committee itself. As a result, a Part 3 meeting of the working group was convened in April 2022. During this meeting, the working group was asked to reflect on 9 topics grouped into 2 main categories. The first category concerned 5 discussion topics that were ultimately linked to the annual number of files for examination. This included, most importantly, the composition of and working methods of the evaluation body. We agreed to set the annual number of files to be examined at no less than 60. At the same time, there was a strong voice that more files should be examined, so the working group requested the Secretariat to prepare a detailed proposal of the financial and human resources needed for strengthening the listing mechanism. This proposal should be submitted for examination by the committee for transmission to the Executive Board and the 10th session of the General Assembly. Following this agreement, the working group agreed to maintain the current composition and working methods of the evaluation body. We also agreed that inscription on an extended or reduced basis are to be considered outside the annual sealing on an experimental basis. Now, here, when you want to reduce or expand, then this request will not be counted as one of the 60. This is outside. But some fears were expressed in this regard because then people might want to go for extensions because this is not counted as one. So if that happens in the future, then we have to re-examine this part. So the arrangements for now is on an experimental basis. The second category of issues comprise other technical issues that required further reflection. Concerning the backlog files, the working group agreed that backlog files older than 4 years should be removed from the backlog while inviting members to submit updated versions which are to be treated expeditiously within the framework of the prioritization system. Concerning the possibility of obtaining additional information regarding nominations by using a dialogue process with accredited NGOs, it was agreed that the issue will be discussed in the new initiative on the broader implication of Article 18 of the Convention. I have some requests from some delegations about this particular point, so I will come back to the point later. Concerning the examination of exceptional cases, it was decided that any exceptional cases that increase the annual ceiling shall be reviewed by the committee with the understanding that this does not concern cases falling under extreme urgency. The working group invited the Secretariat to recommend possible criteria to define exceptional cases. On this one again, I'll come back to this point later. Now, all the required amendments of the operational directives as a result of the recommendations of the working group have been approved by the committee in its 16th session and the 5th extraordinary session. The present session of the General Assembly is now requested to approve the proposed amendments to the operational directives in order to implement the recommendations made by the open-ended intergovernmental working group as endorsed by the 16th session and by the 5th extraordinary sessions of the committee. Now, I would like to mention some points raised by the delegations who want me to report these in the General Assembly. During the Part 3 meeting, I was requested by some members of the working group to include 3 issues in my report to the General Assembly. One issue concerns backlog files. The other relates to the working group on Article 18. The last one was on the procedure to examine exceptional cases. Now, the topic on backlog was raised when discussing issues linked to the annual number of files. Files that could not be treated due to the annual seeding and the priority system are commonly called backlog files and stay in the pipeline of nominations. Long discussions were held on this issue, and the working group recommended that backlog files older than 4 years should be returned to the submitting states. Some delegations expressed their concern that a few countries with a significant number of backlog files would not be able to have their files withdrawn, submitted again, and be evaluated within 4 years. So those state parties with many backlog files would be required to update their files a second time. Therefore, it was suggested that Secretariat open the dialogue with those states to establish a plan for the resubmission of their backlog files. Secondly, some delegations expressed views that the NGO should concentrate on capacity building and good practices rather than play a role in terms of providing additional information regarding the nominations. Our working group did not have a mandate to determine the agenda item for this new working group on Article 18, so I was requested to mention those points in my report to this General Assembly. The third topic that I was asked to report was raised when discussing other issues requiring further reflection. It relates to the procedure to examine exceptional cases. Some delegations expressed their wish that discussion take place to identify a group or body to work on establishing the criteria for the definition of exceptional cases in the context of the 2003 Convention. This point was not agreed and therefore not included in the recommendation, so I was asked to mention these views in my report. Mr. Chairperson, these are the main points that I wanted to present to the General Assembly. Following a request of the working group, the Secretariat has prepared a set of draft amendments to the operational directives based on the recommendations of Part 3 meeting. I understand that the Secretary is ready to present an overview of the proposed amendments to the operational directives. At the same time, I would like to underscore that these revisions have already been endorsed by the 16th session and the 5th extraordinary sessions of the committee, covering all 3 parts of the recommendations of the working group. As the chair of the working group, my suggestion would be that the General Assembly approves the proposed revisions to the operational directives without reopening any technical discussion, because once again, all those details have already been cleared at the committee level. I'm supposed to finish here, but let me just add one thing. To avoid any misunderstanding, the structure is this. This working group on global reflection was created by the committee. So we presented our recommendations to the committee. And as a result of that, the committee looked at the changes in the operational directives as a result of the recommendations. The committee so approved, endorsed the recommendations and also the changes in the operational directives. Now here, working groups are open-ended, so everybody was able to participate, and then we had recommendations. Recommendations were approved. So institutionally, the process is already done. The process is already done. But General Assembly has to approve the changes in the operational directives, and therefore the item is here. What I'm saying is actually my plea. Please don't reopen the recommendations because the process has been completed. I do recognize that there are some points which are relevant to the discussions we had yesterday. For example, the exceptional cases. Yes, we did have discussions, and that resulted in the recommendations, but these recommendations do not require any changes in the operational directives. So, in the future, Secretariat will come up with a criteria, a proposed criteria for those emergency cases. But I don't think it's the time to reopen the discussions now. So with that, thank you very much for your cooperation, and I hope that recommendations will serve the purposes of the convention in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your report, Ambassador Oiki. And the global reflection was a comprehensive process that allowed broad consultations to take place. As the main outcome, we have in front of us this important set of amendments to the operational directives that are required to be implemented and bring to life the discussions and insightful recommendations of the working group. Before moving to the draft resolution, I now request the Secretariat to provide us further information. Mr. Assistant Director General of Culture, the floor is yours.
Gracias, señora Presidente. Las propuestas de revisión de las directrices operativas se presentan a la atención de la presente sesión en la Asamblea General en el anexo del documento 9. Los textos resaltados en gris corresponden a las revisiones recomendadas por la 16ª reunión del Comité, basadas en las recomendaciones de las reuniones que fueron descritas en la parte 1 y 2 del grupo de trabajo. Los textos resaltados en azul, blue, se refieren a las revisiones recomendadas por la 5ª reunión extraordinaria del Comité, basadas en las recomendaciones de la reunión de la parte 3 del grupo de trabajo. Como lo mencionó el embajador Oike en su informe, en 2 ocasiones el Comité recomendó a la presente reunión de la Asamblea General que adopte las enmiendas propuestas a las directrices operativas, reflejando el espíritu y, sobre todo, la base de las recomendaciones del grupo de trabajo. Además de las revisiones de las directrices operativas que se proponen para aprobación por la Asamblea General, algunos de los resultados de las reflexiones globales se aplicarán de otras maneras. El grupo de trabajo prestó una particular atención a las necesidades de personal de la Secretaría y debatió sobre las formas de mejorarla. A petición del grupo de trabajo, la Secretaría tenía previsto presentar una propuesta sobre los recursos financieros humanos para el examen para la 18ª sesión del Comité en 2023, con miras a un posterior aprobación por parte de la 10ª sesión de la Asamblea en el año 2024 y posterior debate en el contexto más amplio de la gobernanza de la UNESCO. Asimismo, el grupo de trabajo ha invitado a la Secretaría a que recomiende posibles criterios para definir los casos excepcionales en relación con las candidaturas tal como se incluye en las recomendaciones de la reunión de la parte 3 del grupo de trabajo. La Secretaría ha tomado debida nota de este estímulo. El grupo de trabajo también identificó la necesidad de iniciar una reflexión sobre una aplicación más amplia del artículo 18 de la Convención. Esto incluye la continuación del debate sobre cómo mejorar el diálogo y la comunicación entre las partes interesadas de la Convención, con especial atención a las comunidades, los grupos y los individuos. La Secretaría está en estrecho contacto con la delegación de Suecia, que apoya generosamente y financieramente esta iniciativa. Y tiene previsto lanzar una reunión de expertos de categoría 4 sobre este tema en el primer semestre del próximo año, a la que seguirá un grupo de trabajo intergubernamental de composición abierta a fines del 2023. Por último, permítanme señalar que los nuevos formularios para las candidaturas a las listas, las solicitudes de transferencia y de asistencia internacional estarán disponibles a finales de este año para los expedientes de candidaturas que se incluirán en el ciclo del 2024 para el examen del Comité en su 19ª sesión. También se aplicarán, en consecuencia, otros ajustes técnicos, como los términos de referencia del órgano de evaluación. Señora Presidenta, estos son los puntos principales que se quería presentar hoy día a la Asamblea General y, por supuesto, la Secretaría está disponible para responder a cualquier pregunta sobre la reflexión global. Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Mr. ADG, for your detailed presentation. What we are seeing in front of us is the result of hard labor since 2018. The proposed revisions to the operational directives in itself is a real achievement, as they are ambitious in scope and technically complex. First and foremost, allow me to recognize the efforts of the working group that prepared their recommendations through the three-parts meeting. Special thanks must go to the chairperson of the working group, Ambassador Oiki from Japan, whose able leadership made it possible for the group to conclude its work. I would like to take this opportunity to especially thank the government of Japan for their financial support throughout the reflection process. At this stage, let me invite the members of the General Assembly who certainly are keen to share their points of view on this important reflection and its outcomes. The floor is now open. Does anybody wish to take the floor? But please, just a reminder, we are going to strictly follow the 2-minute rule. We have to. Thank you. The first 3 speakers in our list is Kuwait, Palestine, and Belgium. We start with Kuwait first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone. Let me start with thank His Excellency Ambassador of Japan for his great leadership during this working group, and also like to thank the ADG Culture and his team for the report and the patient. I would like just to mention one thing, this process was very inclusive. In fact, a lot of times before even the meetings, we as a bureau, we meet and discuss certain issues and we go back to our groups. So I also echo what my dear colleagues, Ambassador of Japan and the Chair, to approve it without discussion, as was mentioned in the committee. So also I appeal to our member states in the General Assembly to approve it without discussion, since we are also behind time. And I thank you, Madam Chair, and I took less than 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Palestine, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'll try to make it faster than my colleague. Let me first thank the government of Japan for their generous contribution to this exercise, and special thanks to the chair of the working group, Ambassador Oike. And don't worry, we also support the approval without discussion, of course. I would like just to stress 2 things, important things that has been discussed during the working group and even during our assembly. One is the exceptional cases that I call emergency cases. We need absolutely to continue reflecting on this and to have something concrete in the operational directives. This is one thing. Second thing, we discussed it also very thoroughly, R2. And I reiterate the request to the Secretariat, the urgent need to simplify the form regarding R2 especially, just like it was done for R5 in the past. And to conclude, before concluding, I thank also the government of Sweden for their generous support for the coming working group. And finally, though I presented a very, very slight amendment to the DR that will come for this item, and I'm sure the Assembly will support it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Belgium, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. La Belgique tient à remercier toutes les parties prenantes impliquées ces dernières années au processus ayant permis d'aboutir au rapport soumis aujourd'hui aux modifications des directives opérationnelles approuvées lors de cette 9e Assemblée. Les propositions actuelles apportent des défis et des problèmes urgents, notamment les critères spécifiés à l'article 16 pour la liste représentative et les critères de l'article 17 pour la liste du PCI nécessitant une sauvegarde urgente, ainsi que l'ajustement des procédures d'examen et d'inscription des dossiers de candidature. Les nouveaux ajouts aux directives opérationnelles s'attachent également au mécanisme de transfert et de suppression d'éléments inscrits sur des listes et proposent désormais une procédure transparente et ordonnée que nous saluons. Nous souhaitons donc remercier le Japon pour le soutien apporté à ce processus, ainsi que le groupe de travail d'experts et le comité intergouvernemental pour avoir sélectionné un certain nombre de propositions et dégagé un consensus. Pour notre délégation, il est néanmoins important de valoriser à l'avenir les propositions et idées concrètes formulées par plus de 200 experts ayant participé à l'enquête en ligne et les riches discussions des réunions d'experts de catégorie 6 dans le cadre de la réflexion globale sur les mécanismes d'inscription de la Convention. Ainsi, nous rappelons l'existence du document de la réunion d'experts dans le cadre de la réflexion globale de mai 2021, document LHE-21-16 comme EXP-7. Ce document est une source très pertinente de propositions qui pourraient encore être exploitées dans le futur si nécessaire. La Belgique soutient la volonté de poursuivre les réflexions sur le potentiel de l'article 18, programme, projet et activités de sauvegarde du PCI, et ce pour la mise en œuvre de notre convention. Et nous remercions la Suède pour son soutien au processus qui sera engagé les 2 prochaines années. Cette piste pourrait être le levier et la clé pour développer la Convention bien au-delà des mécanismes d'inscription. Nous nous réjouissons de la tenue prochaine de travaux sur ce processus crucial et espérons trouver ce point à l'ordre du jour de la 10e Assemblée générale en 2024. Merci Madame la Présidente.
Merci beaucoup. Mr. ADG, I turn over the floor to you.
So I will give the list because the chairperson has been asked to read it and then to finish the list. So China, Sweden, Colombia, Estonia, Japan, France, Netherlands, Switzerland, Romania, Madagascar, Malaysia, Lithuania, Moldova, Denmark, Austria, Brazil, Czechia, Slovakia, Poland. Is there somebody that I forgot? Saudi Arabia. So I had Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan, Jamaica, and Norway. You are all? Yes. Please.
Thank you, ADG. China, you have the floor.
谢谢主席。中方感谢工作组主席日本大使所做的非常详尽的报告，感谢 ADG Anthony 所做的背景介绍。我们作为开放工作组的成员和政府间委员会的委员国，全程参与了全面反思非遗申报机制开放工作组的3次会议，还有2次委员会的会议。我们欢迎工作组就解决有关具体问题达成的共识，赞同大会批准公约操作指南草案。同时，我们也重申 在特殊情况下申报项目的标准和程序，希望秘书处能够提供给下届的委员会进行讨论。也感谢秘书处为工作组工作的开展所做的大量工作，谢谢。
Thank you. Sweden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Sweden has been an active partner in the reflecting process, and we would like to thank the government of Japan for supporting the reflection and the Ambassador of Japan to the UNESCO, Ambassador Oike, for successfully chairing the meetings of the open-ended working group. Among our priorities during this process, Sweden is particularly engaged when it comes to the strong involvement of civil society practitioners and bearers. We also are a strong believer in the role that the Register of Good Safeguarding Practices can play. We are therefore very pleased that we've been able to contribute financially to the reflection for a broader implementation of Article 18 of the Convention. We also know how much time, negotiations, and considerations that lies behind the proposal, and would like to remind the state parties of the consensus recommendation from the committee decided upon just a few days ago. We hope that the General Assembly will adopt the whole text in the annex as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Colombia, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Seré muy breve ya que tuve mucho tiempo de participar en las reuniones y por eso también agradezco. Colombia quiere primero que todo felicitar al embajador Oike, quien nos guió en estas 3 etapas del proceso con una capacidad espectacular, me atrevo a decir, a mis colegas de las otras delegaciones, pero también al secretariado, sin quienes con unos documentos muy buenos y de una calidad excelente no hubiéramos podido llegar a estas buenas decisiones. Así que me uno a lo que dijeron los interventores anteriores de apoyar esta decisión como un todo sin abrir la discusión. De nuevo, muchas gracias y considero realmente que esta reflexión se dio en un momento de transformación, de madurez de la Convención y que nos va a permitir hacer muchas cosas buenas en el futuro por la salvaguardia del patrimonio inmaterial. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Estonia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Estonia would like to commend the hard work accomplished together in the last 2 years under Japan's leadership. The guiding principle in our discussions was how to enhance the involvement of communities in all the mechanisms of the Convention and how to prioritize the ICH safeguarding in the listing system as a whole. We hope these proposed revisions to the operational guidelines will be adopted as a whole. Estonia is glad to note the decision to initiate a separate reflection on the implementation of Article 18. We thank Sweden for supporting this process and look forward to discussing some lighter ways of promoting and disseminating good safeguarding practices. Finally, in the context of the discussions yesterday on exceptional procedures, it is worth noting that in its recommendation 11, the working group invited the Secretariat to recommend possible criteria to define exceptional cases for the committee's consideration. This guidance would definitely help our debates in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Japan would like to congratulate all state parties which have been participating actively to the discussion of the global reflection of the listing mechanism, as well as Team Fumiko and their team to have effectively organized the reunion under the COVID situation. I again hope that team will recover soon. The working group has been a long process with 3 parts, but I believe that we were able to achieve quite a lot. We believe that it would be important in the future to strengthen the financial and human resources of the Secretariat to improve the listing mechanism furthermore. We are looking forward to the new working group on Article 18, and we thank Sweden for its generous contribution. With that, we hope that the proposed revision to the operational directives reflecting the outcome of this working group will be endorsed as a whole without discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. France, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Donc, tout d'abord, la France remercie très chaleureusement le Japon pour son soutien et son travail dans cette réflexion. La France soutient la modification des directives opérationnelles telles que proposées. Nous saluons également et soulignons l'importance de la recommandation 11, donc sur le fait que des critères clairs et précis soient proposés par le secrétariat pour la définition des cas exceptionnels requérant une procédure accélérée. Merci.
Thank you. Netherlands, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. First, we would like to thank the Ambassador of Japan for chairing the working group. As stated during several meetings, the Netherlands is in favor of a dynamic and inclusive listing mechanism with lighter procedures for extended nomination, which would decrease the workload of the Secretariat. The Netherlands would like to echo the recommendation that the reformed listing system should strive to place communities at the center of safeguarding effort and seek their broader and more active participation in all steps of the listing system. The Netherlands states, once again, that the lists are not an end, but a means. As collective guardians of the Convention, we must ensure that the lists do not become an end in itself. We respect the extensive work of the open-ended working group. We all made compromises on different topics, and therefore we endorse the recommendations of the working group and this draft decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Romania, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. La Roumanie remercie également aux experts pour leur gros et formidable travail de réflexion. Ensuite, la Roumanie soutient une meilleure gestion du nombre d'éléments inscrits dans la liste représentative afin de responsabiliser les États dans la mise en œuvre de plans de sauvegarde. N'oublions pas que l'objectif fondamental de la Convention est créer un mécanisme international pour la protection, la conservation et la sauvegarde et bien sûr la visibilité des éléments. Et ainsi, pour éviter l'inflation des éléments et implicitement leur dévalorisation involontaire par la difficulté de suivre la dynamique, les fonctions et les significations de ces éléments, une sélection est nécessaire et obligatoire pour chaque État. Nous soutenons également le rôle des centres de deuxième catégorie de l'UNESCO dans le suivi de plans nationaux de sauvegarde qui conduirait à une transparence et une responsabilisation accrue des États pour remplir leurs obligations. Une autre idée débattue pendant les réunions du groupe de travail vise à la mise en place au niveau de l'UNESCO d'études d'impact sur les conséquences de l'inclusion d'éléments dans la liste représentative pour les communautés concernées. La Roumanie soutient le renforcement du système de suivi au niveau international, national et locaux dans tous les aspects concernés. Finalement, nous saluons les nouvelles mesures à prendre pour la Convention pour réformer les mécanismes d'inscription. La Roumanie continue le dialogue sur des sujets visant le programme de renforcement des capacités, le patrimoine vivant en tant que moteur du développement durable et de l'éducation pour le patrimoine vivant. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Madagascar, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. La réflexion globale sur les mécanismes d'inscription est une étape importante pour l'actualisation du mécanisme, car le futur de la Convention de 2003, c'est aujourd'hui. Je voudrais remercier le groupe 5A pour la confiance témoignée envers Madagascar, pour représenter le groupe, et je voudrais également remercier le gouvernement du Japon et surtout vous, Monsieur le Président du groupe de travail, c'est-à-dire Monsieur l'ambassadeur Oike. En effet, c'est un travail que vous avez mené de main de maître et les travaux sont particulièrement satisfaisants. Je voudrais tout simplement pour l'Afrique aborder un point, la question des priorités. En effet, nous avons la priorité globale Afrique que nous devons toujours avoir à l'esprit. Concernant la représentation, le groupe 5A est un groupe numériquement important, mais si les calculs sont mathématiques, pour l'Afrique, l'inscription est inversement proportionnelle au nombre d'inscriptions en matière de patrimoine culturel immatériel. Nos efforts doivent donc être continus en matière de justice culturelle immatérielle. Je voudrais conclure en disant merci, car nous soutenons tout le travail accompli.
Thank you. Malaysia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, Malaysia would like to express our appreciation to Japan for the leadership role and support given of the open-ended working group. Malaysia would also like to thank the expert committee and the secretariat for their excellent work, as well as to all the participants for their constructive suggestions throughout the meeting for the revision of the operational directives. The refinement of the operational directives is pertinent to strengthen the safeguarding and the preservation of intangible cultural heritage and to ensure its smooth implementation. Malaysia agrees that all state parties have a responsibility to encourage safeguarding at the national level and should evaluate their respective management of the 2003 Convention from time to time. In short, Malaysia supports the decision to approve the revisions to the operational directives as contained in the annex of the present resolution. Thank you. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Lithuania, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. La délégation lituanienne remercie le secrétariat, le gouvernement du Japon et tout en particulier le distingué ambassadeur Oike et tous les États participants du groupe de travail intergouvernemental à composition non limitée pour un immense travail effectué, la recherche des solutions qui n'étaient pas toujours faciles à retrouver. Nous félicitons et soutenons l'ensemble des propositions d'amendement aux directives opérationnelles pour la mise en œuvre de la Convention. Et nous attendons avec l'impatience la continuation du travail dans le même format du groupe de travail intergouvernemental à composition non limitée, qui touchera d'autres questions très pertinentes pour l'avenir de la Convention, et nos grands remerciements au gouvernement du Suède pour son soutien. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. Moldova, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Permettez-moi d'exprimer ma profonde gratitude pour le travail du secrétariat. Ces dernières années, il a apporté tout le soutien nécessaire à notre pays pour mettre en œuvre les dispositions de la Convention et des directives opérationnelles. Dans le contexte des derniers événements néfastes dans le monde, nous saluons les modifications qui encouragent le dépôt des dossiers sur la liste de l'UNESCO, notamment possibilité de demander à la fois l'inscription de l'élément sur la liste du patrimoine culturel immatériel nécessitant une sauvegarde urgente et la demande de l'assistance international. Également, nous saluons l'amendement selon lequel les pays membres pourront rejoindre des éléments déjà inclus dans la liste de l'UNESCO, démontrant ainsi leur identité et unité culturelle. Nous sommes convaincus que la 9e session de l'Assemblée générale de l'UNESCO apportera une contribution significative à la sauvegarde et la promotion du patrimoine culturel immatériel. Et finalement, au nom de la République de Moldova, nous félicitons le nouveau membre du comité et leur souhaitons beaucoup de succès. Merci.
Thank you. Denmark, you have the floor.
First, and thank you, Madam President. First and foremost, Denmark wants to acknowledge the efforts and results of the global reflection on the listing mechanism. It has reached important conclusions, and there's been thorough discussion on the proposed changes. The success of the open-ended method was reflected in the broad consensus expressed on the 5th extraordinary session of the Intergovernmental Committee on Friday. We therefore support that the General Assembly respects the work of the Intergovernmental Working Group and adopts the recommended revision to the operational directives as they are without any further changes. Furthermore, Denmark particularly appreciates that the proposed revisions highlight the importance of involving communities, groups, and individuals in the nomination process and securing their free, prior, and informed consent. We welcome further discussions on how best to secure their active participation, also in the upcoming working group on Article 18 of the Convention. Denmark thanks the governments of Japan and Sweden for sponsoring the previous and the upcoming reflection process, respectively. Last but not least, we want to underline the necessity of securing a sustainable system that allows the Secretariat to work effectively within the resources available. We'd like to use this opportunity to thank the Secretariat for their efforts, not only in relation to the current work on the listing mechanisms, but also in their general efforts to develop our work with the Convention in ways that best live up to the spirit behind it.
Thank you. Austria, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We would also like to thank again the government of Japan and all the states, parties, experts, and other participants who have joined the Open and the Working Group. The results are notable and crucial guidelines for the current and future work of the Convention. We would also like to thank the Secretariat for the preparation and support for this immense task. We cannot emphasize enough the importance of its outcomes, especially consolidation of the current constellation and working methods of the evaluation body and the new operational directives, which underlines the appreciation of its work. As many of the here present delegations and representatives have participated in the meetings, we know that the suggested addition to and changes to the operational directives are the results of intense debates that found their outcome in consensus. So we align ourselves with our other colleagues not to open the debate again, and we are looking forward to the working group on Article 18 in the near future, and rest assured they would have a similarly fruitful outcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brazil, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Nos gustaría subrayar que las propuestas para asegurar una participación más amplia de las comunidades, grupos, en su caso personas, son relevantes no solo para el funcionamiento de las listas, sino también decisivas para el desplegar de las prácticas de salvaguarda. En ese sentido, entendemos que las recomendaciones del grupo de trabajo pueden garantizar mayores grados de participación y compromiso activo de las comunidades. Asimismo, contribuyen a reforzar el carácter representativo, democrático e inclusivo de la Convención. Otro punto que nos gustaría remarcar es, creemos que una reflexión más ampliada sobre el artículo 18 de la Convención brindará mayor visibilidad y madurez para el reconocimiento y la promoción de buenas prácticas de salvaguarda. Eso debería permitir que la conexión entre protección, salvaguardia y monitoreo sean tan relevante como los esfuerzos dedicados a mejorar los mecanismos del Estado de la Convención. Se necesitan reflexiones sustanciales que vayan más allá de la reforma de los procedimientos de las listas en búsqueda de nuevos equilibrios para la implementación plena y equitativa de nuestra Convención. Se ha dedicado mucha atención a la lista representativa en detrimento de otros temas que podrían ser igualmente o incluso más urgentes de abordar. Un ejemplo, tenemos 529 elementos reconocidos en la lista representativa y 29 en el registro de buenas prácticas de salvaguardia. Un enfoque en el registro de buenas prácticas beneficiaría las reflexiones sobre la relación entre el patrimonio cultural inmaterial y la sostenibilidad, subrayando cómo los elementos culturales y las prácticas reconocidas contribuyen al logro de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Desde nuestro punto de vista, los conocimientos tradicionales deben ser reconocidos no solo como medios para asegurar su propia viabilidad y la consecuente diversidad cultural de la humanidad, sino también como ejemplos de estrategias de resiliencia, creatividad, desarrollo y reinvención. Brasil cree que debemos aprovechar de manera más estratégica el potencial del registro de buenas prácticas de salvaguardia. Nos complace saber que Suecia patrocinará el grupo de trabajo sobre el artículo 18.
May I request the speaker to conclude, please?
Al fin y al cabo, las listas deben ser instrumentos para generar conciliación y conocimiento mutuo. Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you. Czech Republic, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As my colleagues, the delegations of Czechia, I would like to thank everyone who has participated in the entire reflection process, starting with Japan for its generous contribution and His Excellency Mr. Atsuyuki Oike, who, as the chairperson of the open-ended working group, guided the whole process in a very efficient and wise manner. We also need to commend the Secretariat for perfect service and support, very well prepared materials and draft amendments, which we are going to approve today. Last but not least, we deeply appreciate the work of our colleagues, experts, as well as members of the open-ended working group. The discussions were open to everyone, long, thorough, and crowned with a broad consensus, which is reflected in the revised text of the operational guidelines, and confirmed by smooth endorsement by the Intergovernmental Committee. All our questions have been answered by the Secretariat during the information session. Although we expected a small revolution, all amendments and final recommendations are primarily of practical and procedural manner. However, very important issues were opened and discussed, some of them for the first time, and very much needed procedures have been set up. We are ready to adopt the proposed text as it is drafted and believe in importance and success of the next deliberation with regard to Article 18 of the Convention. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Slovakia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Slovakia would like to thank the Secretariat, Japan, and especially His Excellency Ambassador of Japan for the relentless work aiming to improve the system of the listing mechanisms. We welcome the proposed amendments to the operational directives, and we hope that they will be adopted as they are. Having had an expert in the evaluation body, we know how precious the technical assistance of the Secretariat is, which on many occasions is reaching its capacity limits. In this respect, we would like to highlight the necessity for extra budgetary funding in order to increase the capacity of the Secretariat to cope with the workload. We highly appreciate the work of the evaluation body. Our priority should be to maintain this high quality and consistency of its work in order to continue strengthening the credibility of the Convention and equal handling of all. We are very happy that a compromise has been reached in this respect. More attention should, however, be paid to the current geographical imbalance. First, by setting priorities, and second, by focusing on capacity building to improve the quality of submitted files. The international assistance can help not only with the preparation of the nomination files, but at the same time could be used for research, inventory, or other activities that would help to protect the ICH. More focus should therefore be paid on other aspects of the 2003 Convention. In this respect, Slovakia welcomes the initiative leading to a broader implementation of Article 18 of the Convention. Our experts and relevant stakeholders are looking forward to contributing to discussions, and we thank Sweden for the support to the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone. A lot has been said already, so I'll be very brief. And I would like to also attend the whole group of the member states who thank the government of Japan and especially Ambassador Atsuyuki Oike for his great leadership during the whole process of this global reflections on the listing mechanism. I also would like to thank very much the Secretariat for all the assistance and help that they provided to us whenever we need it. We are convinced that this new recommendations that has just been established by the open-ended working group will improve all the provisions of the operational directives and will strengthen the system of the ICH protection. We believe that all of them should be adopted as a whole, and we would like to support the proposed draft decision. We also would like to thank all the members of the Convention for constructive cooperation during the last years on this matter. At the end, I also would like to thank the government of Sweden for the support proposed and for the continuity of the reflection on the broader implementation of Article 18. We find that it's very necessary to actually have this discussion. Last but not least, allow me to congratulate all the new elected members to the committee and wish them a productive time during their mandate. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to be quick and brief. First of all, I would like to thank you, Ambassador Atsuyoki, and thank the government of Japan for the wise and very efficient leadership of this very long and inclusive reflection. I would like to thank the secretariats and the committee of experts for the great work that they have done in providing support to us in this process of reflection. Definitely, this reflection and the results of it is going to lead us to a more structured, sustainable, systematic approach of our work in this intergovernmental committee, where we fully endorse the changes to the proposed amendment to the operational directives, and we're looking forward for further reflection into the implementation of item 18. And also, we're looking forward specifically for the detailed proposal on how to increase the capacity for increasing the ceiling of files to be nominated, whether human resources or financial resources, so that we can support the convention in that. And we're looking forward to how can we define a clear criteria for exceptional cases to avoid further confusions. You have all our support. This process was inclusive since day one. Everyone here was invited to attend, and this process was clearly adopted and fully adopted by the Intergovernmental Committee. All what we need now is to endorse it as is. Wishing all the best of luck, and thank you.
Thank you. Azerbaijan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Azerbaijan would like to thank the chair of the working group and the Secretariat for comprehensive information presented to us. We note with satisfaction the efficient work in advancing the reflection on the listing mechanisms. We believe that the wide consultation process has brought its results, now reflected in proposed revisions to the operational directives. We would also like to thank Japan for its financial support and the effective leadership, which allowed to complete the reflection process in such an efficient manner. Our delegation notes with interest that the global reflection has led to a new initiative to reflect on a broader implementation of Article 18 of the Convention with regard to the programs and projects that best reflect the principles of the Convention. In our view, this represents also an important part of the future of this Convention, since this mechanism allows sharing experiences internationally. We're pleased to know that thanks to the support from Sweden, a Category 6 expert meeting will continue its reflections in this regard in the near future. I thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you. Jamaica, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Jamaica also thanks Japan for its excellent leadership in this process, the open-ended working group for its diligent work, and Sweden for its committed support. The procedures of this committee have been proven to be as thorough as they are nimble, tested as they have been by the global COVID-19 pandemic and emergency situations. We congratulate the working group in reviewing this governing instrument to secure harmonization, currency, good governance, inclusivity, equity, and efficiency, a standard which Jamaica believes has been met. It has been an honor for Jamaica to have served this committee. The traditions and collegiality have allowed the discharge of its solemn duty to see to the preservation of our living heritage effectively. Reform embraces the opportunity to build upon these successes, and we commend the work which introduces the various mechanisms and methodologies which augur well for additional opportunities for dialogue and engagement between the committee and countries with submissions. We are optimistic that this will increase the success of nominations. Each are invaluable gifts to the world. We are confident that outcomes of this and upcoming reform processes will embrace even more deeply and widely the vocabulary and vibrance of distinct cultures and forms, will achieve greater flexibility, broad enough to expeditiously and adequately treat with exceptional circumstances, attain simplicity in processes, and support strengthened capacity for all submitting states. Jamaica will continue to support this work, which ultimately increases knowledge and understanding of people and the sustainable development of our world. We thank you.
Thank you. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Norway warmly welcomes the global reflection process on the listing mechanisms and would like to express our gratitude to the various stakeholders who have participated. We would also like to thank the government of Japan for its generous support to the process. As several speakers rightly stated yesterday, a more even geographical representation between the elements inscribed is to be hoped for. Preparing nominations remains a challenging and resource-intensive undertaking, thus illustrating the importance of capacity-building initiative and support from the Secretariat. As we stated on the first day, the Register of Best Safeguarding Practices remains an underutilized instrument. Norway would like to see a more even balance between the different listing mechanisms. We would like to echo the remarks made yesterday by the Netherlands in that the listing mechanisms should not be seen as ends in themselves. Rather, they should be seen as one of several instruments for highlighting and disseminating of intangible cultural heritage, as well as instruments for its continued transmission, safeguarding, and documentation. As we stated yesterday, the challenging resource situation of the Secretariats needs to be kept in mind. Unless more resources are allocated to the Secretariat, an increase in the number of annual nominations is simply not sustainable. This is a key question for the continued viability and sustainability of the Convention and to its very legitimacy. We therefore support the draft resolution as presented, and we are looking forward to the future work on Article 18, funded by Sweden. Thank you.
Thank you. Philippines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Philippines acknowledges the work that has gone into producing the amendments. We welcome those setting out a clear process for transferring elements from one list to another, as well as for removing an element from the representative list. We echo the sentiment expressed by the delegation of Denmark, particularly in ensuring the free, prior, and informed consent of the communities concerning their heritage, and we look forward to the upcoming working group on Article 18 and hope for a fruitful outcome of such working group. We hope for the adoption of the draft resolution as a whole. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ethiopia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Ethiopia expresses its gratitude to Japan, the Secretariat, and all those who participated in this meticulous task of amending and revising the listing mechanisms and operational directives. Taking this opportunity, I join the Ambassador of Madagascar regarding the issue of making Africa a priority. As incoming committee member and a state party, Ethiopia endorses the draft resolution and commits itself to the implementation of the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That closes our debate. And let us move now to the draft resolution. Please refer to the draft resolution in document 9, which is Switzerland and Burkina Faso. Switzerland, then Burkina Faso.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Vous nous avez sauté avant dans la liste, alors on aimerait bien prendre la parole. La Suisse remercie le groupe de travail à composition non limitée et le secrétariat pour l'excellent travail mené dans le cadre des réflexions sur les mécanismes d'inscription sur les listes de la Convention. Nous réitérons également nos remerciements chaleureux au gouvernement du Japon et plus spécifiquement à l'ambassadeur Oike, qui a apporté son précieux soutien à ce processus de réforme important. Nous tenons à mettre en évidence la qualité de la démarche permettant d'associer progressivement les experts, puis tous les États membres, les États parties, à travers d'un groupe de travail à composition non limitée pour permettre une large participation. Ceci nous a permis de parvenir à un large consensus quant aux révisions qui nous sont proposées aujourd'hui. Ces dernières reflètent la volonté de proposer des solutions pragmatiques et équilibrées à des défis de notre Convention. En ce sens, la Suisse salue les résultats obtenus par le groupe de travail à composition non limitée pour présenter, avec l'appui du secrétariat et la validation du comité, un ensemble cohérent et pertinent de révision des règles de procédure. La Suisse soutient l'ensemble des propositions et révisions telles que proposées et l'invite l'Assemblée générale à en faire de même, sans rouvrir le débat de fond. Au-delà des révisions, nous souhaitons poursuivre le dialogue et la réflexion autour du fonctionnement de notre Convention, notamment par le biais de l'initiative lancée pour la mise en œuvre de l'article 18, soutenue par la Suède. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
The next speakers are Burkina Faso and Mongolia, and we absolutely have to close the list. Burkina Faso, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Excusez, le Burkina Faso voudrait donc à son tour féliciter le groupe de travail et le secrétariat pour le rapport exhaustif produit. Il remercie en particulier le gouvernement du Japon pour le soutien aux 10 groupes et félicite également de façon appuyée l'ambassadeur du Japon pour la dextérité avec laquelle il a conduit notamment les travaux du groupe de travail à composition non limitée qui a conduit donc au résultat. Le Burkina Faso a participé donc de façon active à ce groupe de travail. Enfin, le Burkina Faso soutient les recommandations qui ont été dégagées. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. And Mongolia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mongolia would like to commend the excellent work of the open-ended working group and the Ambassador of Japan for leading this great process. We are fully in favor of adopting the recommendation on the reflection. However, we wish to emphasize that human and financial resources of the Secretariat should be further considered in the future work of the implementation of the recommendations as it was expressed by the Secretariat and other few delegates in this room. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is the end of the debate. And now we go to the draft decision resolution 9.GA9 as shown on the screen. Let's go paragraph by paragraph because there is a slight revision, proposed revision in a certain paragraph. Paragraph 1, citing the document we have examined, do I see any objections? There being none, adopted. Paragraph 2, recalling our previous decisions, do I see objections? None, adopted. Paragraph 3, taking note of the revisions to the operational directives endorsed by the 16th session of the committee on the basis of the recommendations of Part 1 and Part 2 meetings of the open-ended intergovernmental working group. Are there any adopted? Paragraph 4, further taking note of the revisions to the operational directives endorsed by the 5th extraordinary session of the committee on the basis of the recommendations of Part 3, meeting of the working group. Any objections? None? Adopted. Paragraph 5, thanking Japan for having supported the global reflection. No objection? Palestine is here. Adopted. Paragraph 6, expressing appreciation to the experts who took part in the consultation phase and to the open-ended intergovernmental working group for their work, dedication, and engagement. May I read paragraph 6 again? Expressing appreciation to the experts who took part in the consultation phase.
You have to read it from here, because there is an amendment.
Okay. Expresses his appreciation to the open-ended intergovernmental working group, and Palestine has the proposed amendment to add its chairperson, His Excellency Ambassador Atsuyuki Oike, and the experts who took part in the consultation for their work, dedication, and engagement. They want it. Yes, Ambassador Oike, you have the floor.
Sorry, thank you, Madam. Well, I really appreciate the kind words from Palestine. And also, I would like to appreciate all the kind words expressed by other delegations. It's really nice to see you in person. Many of you, I saw you on the screen, but it's nice to have you here in the room. Having said that, with all due respect to my dear friend Munir, it's a little bit strange to mention a name. This is an expression of appreciation to the open-ended working group, and we worked together. So perhaps having a particular name may not really be appropriate in this context. So with all my thanks to you, I propose that my name should disappear. Thank you.
Ambassador Oike, the name to disappear, but how about the title? Title? Yes, title, chairperson.
Well, essentially, this is thanks to the entire membership of the working group, so I don't think it's actually necessary. Thank you.
Is there no objection to what Ambassador Oike has proposed? Palestine would like to take that. Are you opposing Palestine?
Never enough opposition with my dear friend Ambassador Oike. Just to make it clear, it's not unusual to have names in the DRs. We did it in other assemblies, and we thank persons. We mention names of persons. It's not unusual, even in the executive board also. So it's, I'm not opposing, but maybe if you find it too much to have the name, maybe we can put the chairperson as the president proposed. But in any case, if this is your wish, I can go along with it. I never oppose my dear friend from Japan. So it's up to you, Madam Chair, now. You have our position. Thank you again, but sincere thanks. I propose that because you heard all state parties who took the floor after during the debate, they expressed appreciation and thanks to you personally as chair. So that's why I proposed this amendment. and you saw there was no objection, it was only yours. I can go along with your objection. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. May I propose that we retain chairperson and delete the name? Is that acceptable to all? No objections? Carried. I have to. Oh, carried. We are in paragraph 7, also takes note of a separate initiative launched to reflect on a broader implementation of Article 18 of the Convention. Further thanks Sweden for supporting this initiative and requests that the Secretariat report on the progress to the 10th session of the General Assembly. No objection? Adopted. Para 8 decides to approve the revisions to the operational directives as contained in the annex of the present resolution. No objections? Adopted.
Now the whole decision.
Okay, and now we go to the adoption of the whole resolution. No objections? Whole resolution 9.GA9 is adopted.